What might you find if you went on a walk in the Arctic?
What might you see?
That's right. We're really thinking about our vision here. What might you see?
So polar bears, I see right in the middle there.
Penguins?
Penguins are actually, I think, in the Antarctic, the other end. I see snow.
I think I would have thought penguins too.
It's a easy thing to think about because they're definitely around a lot of snow, right?
Icebergs
Icebergs. I see a lot of polar bears.
and a sunset or sun.
Oh, just sort of like what's in the back of your screen there. That looks like a sunset. Arctic fox, I see.
Oh, I think I saw fish.
Fish, glaciers, water, snow.
So with the fish, they must be either
Yeah,
we're seeing under the ice, maybe, or they're jumping.
maybe depending on what time of year you're going for your walk. We see animals. I see bears. Hmm. I see somebody's written Northern Lights. Interesting.
It sounds like a really nice walk. So I'm actually gonna take off some of these warm clothes since I'm not really in the Arctic.
Okay. Lots of interesting. Thanks for sharing, everybody. Lots of interesting things we might see in the Arctic. Thank you for sharing on the Padlet too. So we saw some great comments, and some people posted about monarch butterflies and how they migrate. And Kendall, thank you for posting about how the duck habitat changes in the summer and the winter. And then we also saw some pictures of moose homes in the summer and moose homes in the winter, and the same with birds.
Here's a comic strip of a bear getting ready for the winter, preparing, eating, collecting food, eating food, and then hibernating.
Love
Thanks
it.
for that. And Marcel, this was Buff flying, I'm not sure which way, probably flying to like the California coast for winter. It
Yeah.
looks like maybe there's some leaves flying off of the tree.
Yeah.
What a awesome drawing.
Buff the Bufflehead. Love it.
Well, in some weeks up to this, we have looked at the changing seasons and what that means for animals, how animals adapt to those changes. Some animals would be looking for food and shelter near where they live year round. And then other animals, like the monarch, will migrate for hundreds or thousands of miles in search of food and shelter.
So today we're traveling to the Arctic, and we're going to learn how some animals stay active throughout the extreme Arctic winter with the help of their special body parts. So, what's it like in the Arctic? The Arctic region of the globe is at the very top, and maybe Dan, maybe you can point to it. It's at the very top of the Earth, and it includes the ice and water there around the North Pole, and also the Arctic includes some very cold and icy land regions that are around the that ice and water near the North Pole. So that includes Canada and Asia, or Russia, Greenland, and Alaska.
It's a nice picture there on the screen. And if you remember last week, we talked to Jack, our bird expert, about the why all the animals are going to the Arctic in the summer. There's so much daylight and there's so much sun, and so there's all this stuff growing. Well, the opposite is true in the winter. It's at the very top, the North Pole, it might go weeks without any sunlight. And even in places near the top, you may see sun for only a few hours a day. It's really a kind of a dark place in the winter, and it's so snowy and so cold. So I mean, so snowy and there's so much ice. It is cold. I wonder, Susan, like how cold does it get?
So this is pretty amazing. But on a typical day in the Arctic, it can be minus 40 degrees.
That is really cold. I think I might have to put my jacket back on it. In the winter, it gets to minus 40 degrees.
40 degrees below zero. Pretty amazingly cold. So much of the Arctic is really very, very flat. And you definitely will see lots of ice and snow, but there are also mountains. And if you go to the very southern part of the Arctic region, you will see trees. And those trees are where many animals will go to get out of the wind or the deep snow.
It's a pretty harsh place, real severe. And you might think you wouldn't see any humans. You can. The Inuit people live in the top of Alaska all year round in the north. And here we also have a picture of scientists studying Arctic ice. So they're doing some experiments in the summer because in the winter, even for some of those scientists, it's just a little too tough, a little too dark. So that's a summer picture there.
Summer picture. And you might see some animals. So there's a lone wolf in a very large Arctic landscape. And then you might see a snowy owl. Just two examples.
So we could see some animals and people, perhaps. It's so empty, though. And I wonder, Susan, are there any sounds that we would hear?
Well, I think you would hear some sounds, and I'd like to play a game here. So I can play a sound, and I'd like to have you look at those photos and think, what is making that sound? Shall we go for one?
Games, games.
What is that sound coming from?
You can point to your screen, right? I think.
Yeah. So yeah, it's that wind.
Feels nasty just to imagine it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in those tents with those scientists with that wind blowing. So let's try another one. Okay, what is this sound? What's making this sound? Yeah, it's the snowy
Pretty
owl.
nice.
Yeah, the snowy owl.
Wonder what it's saying.
Here, let's try one more.
Susan, that's one of my favorite noises in the winter. It's a sound that brings me lots of joy.
Yeah, the sound of snowshoes, right? Going in the
Like the snow crunching. It's just even for me, even better than the leaves crunching.
And let's do one more. Well, there's only one left, but let's see what that sounds like. That's the caribou. Caribou making some grunting sounds, which is very typical for the way a caribou sounds. Cool. Good job.
Yeah. So we may hear some animals. We may even be lucky enough to see some animals. Let's think about the question we've been exploring for a few weeks of how do animals survive? And so today, let's ask this question. We can go to our Mentimeter soon. What must animals do to survive the Arctic winter? Think about that. You can write your answers down if you're unable to get to the link, season 3B, and go ahead and put some answers in. What must animals do to survive the Arctic winter?
There's our food cloud, our word cloud, and I see food in the middle of it. They need to find food. Absolutely.
Shelter is also a big one.
They need to find shelter.
I see.
They need to stay warm.
I see sleep, and I think people are. I see hibernate as well, and so
Mhm.
it's kind of like sleep hibernating, and that's a good. That's an interesting idea.
I see they need to hunt.
Yeah, gather food.
They need to hide. Oh, that's interesting. That's
Did
sort
you
of
see hmm?
avoiding those predators.
Did you see blubber there? They had
Yeah,
blubber.
yeah. Get fat,
Drink.
drink. Absolutely, they need to do that.
Kind of thinking about all those basic needs of living things, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, someone wrote adapt.
Totally.
These are lots
Good
of
ideas. Yeah.
lots of nice thoughts. And then of course, if you don't know, that's also great because we are going to keep exploring the question. And we'll start out by looking at this animal, which it's actually just the perfect animal to be thinking about at this time of year in winter, our reindeer.
So, Dan, did you know reindeer are actually the same animal as caribou? Usually we use the word reindeer when we're talking about animals on a farm, or animals that are, we call them domesticated. And then we use the term caribou when we mean the animals that are um, wild and living in the Arctic. So, yeah, so we were just looking at the Mentimeter with a question. What do caribou need to do to survive in the Arctic?
That's right. And an answer that many people mentioned was find food. So we can explore how a caribou finds their food, specifically using what body parts help them find their food. And those we also call adaptations. So what body parts, what adaptations help caribou find food?
And maybe just
This
think, yeah, just think about that for a moment.
jot
And
some ideas down.
so, how do caribou find their food and what body parts might they use? Let's maybe look at another animal and see how they use their body parts to find food. And then maybe that'll help us with the caribou question.
Maybe it'll give us some clues about how caribou find their food.
Yeah. So there is an Arctic fox. I think it's a very pretty, beautiful animal. They have a fantastically good sense of hearing. And what they can do is they listen for like a scruffling noise that they might hear deep, very deep under the snow. And if they think they hear something, they figure out exactly where it is, and then they jump way high in the air. Like they can have all 4 feet off the ground, and then they land with their front paws that push through the snow and the ice to get to their prey. And what do Arctic foxes like to eat? Lemmings.
Lemmings.
So that's a very cute little animal there. It's the size of a gerbil or a hamster. Um, so, yeah,
Tasty.
tasty. So let's think for a moment. What body parts help the Arctic fox find its food?
Yeah, that's a great idea. And then we can look at another animal and what it does to find food. This is our snowy owl. Now, they also have a really sensitive hearing, so they can hear their prey, and they have really special flight feathers. So their feathers on the edge, when it hits the wind, there's no sound. No sound. So that means that they can glide and flap and sneak up on their prey without them knowing they're coming. It's a really special
Amazing.
adaptation for finding their food.
And then what do they sneak up on for their dinner?
Lemmings.
Lemmings. So fortunately, in case you're feeling sorry for the lemming, it has adaptations or body parts that help it survive as well. So in the winter, its coat turns white, so it gets a little better camouflage than it shows in that photo. And they also get really long front claws, so they can claw and make little holes to hide in and to stay warm in.
Kind of like little burrows.
Yeah, little burrows in the snow. Exactly. So let's go back to that question. How do caribou find their food? So caribou are in the deer family, and so they are called herbivores. And what does that mean they eat?
So that means they eat plants. And that's what you're looking at here are a plant called lichen. Um, not a lot of plants grow in the Arctic in winter because there's so little sunlight. And so lichen is the main plant that that caribou can find. They spend the entire winter eating the lichen, and they actually eat 12 pounds every day.
Wow, Dan, that's a lot of lichen. And I hope they like their lichen.
It's good.
So it's all buried deep under the snow. What body parts do you think caribou might use to find their lichen dinner?
Yeah, think about that. So here's a chance for us to do some sketching. This will just be a quick basic outline. We're going to copy the outline of the caribou. So you can go ahead and get started on that. And once we have the outline, then we can start to think about what body parts help caribou to survive, help it to find food. And we'll add those in a moment. But right now, just go ahead and copy down an outline of a caribou.
Yeah, get your pencil and paper out now and sketch the caribou.
And give you another 30 seconds.
Yeah, this can be a very rough sketch. Okay, so Dan, that's what I drew.
There you go. There's a great outline of a caribou. And now what we'll do is we can all think about body parts to add that help the caribou find food and or other ways it can survive. So we'll get started on that. And Susan, it looks like you started something.
I started something. I put in the eyes. Um, yeah, that's something that I think caribou need to find food. So I also put in the words as well.
Yeah, I noticed that you wrote down a word and a description, and you even drew an arrow, a line towards the body parts, so that there's a lot of body parts in ways that caribou may survive and find food. So be good to have some things written down on our sketches to help us remember, and also to share with us on the Padlet.
Ah, yes. And I wrote eyes, but I'm sure you all can think of other ways that the caribou finds food, other body parts that they use.
This one will give a little bit longer,
Okay.
maybe another minute. And we'll also be able to come back to this later, and anything you aren't able to finish, you can always add at the afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, the Padlet will be available for a long time.
So we will have some time to come back to this in this program as well. So maybe we'll give you another 15 seconds or so. What body parts do caribou need to survive the winter in the Arctic?
Yeah. We were talking about food, Susan.
Yeah. So finding food is certainly important, but another thing that's important is to avoid being food. So animals need to avoid predators in the Arctic. That's another very important thing they need to do. So how do they do that?
I could think of a pattern perhaps here. Is that something that my friends out there are seeing?
Yeah. So how are these animals avoiding predators? And also an insect.
Oh, that's neat. Even in the freezing Arctic, you might find a
Might.
butterfly.
So a lot of you asked, I saw a couple questions on the Padlet about how do Arctic foxes and Arctic hares turn brown in the summer? And it's absolutely true. They do turn brown in the summer. They are white in the winter and they're brown in the summer. And they do that. They shed their coat. So when it gets to be warmer in the spring, the fox and the hare will shed their coat. They lose their fur, and the new fur that grows in is brown. And then later, when it gets cold again, the white fur grows back.
That's a pretty good strategy
Yeah.
for blending in.
Yeah.
Here we have the muskox, an animal that lives in the Arctic. So they have some different strategies, some different adaptations, one of which is in summer, they have to defend against insects. Remember, there's so much life going on in the summer in the Arctic. So there's insects buzzing all around. And so they use a really long and shaggy coat to protect them from getting bug bites. And then in the winter, they have a predator, the wolf. And so as you can see, they don't blend in so well to the snow. So what they do is they gather in a group and they protect each other. They get together in big numbers. They use those long pointy horns and they point it at the wolves. And together they can be protecting their young, the old, and even the sick musk oxen from being eaten by those wolves.
Hmm. Interesting. So how do you think caribou avoid predators then? Do they use any body parts or adaptations?
Something to ponder.
Something to ponder, something to think about. So, Dan, what temperature was it again in the Arctic?
40 degrees below zero, minus 40 degrees.
Way cold. So this, I saw this answer in the Mentimeter. One thing that animals need to do in the Arctic winter is stay warm. And one way that many animals do is by having a lot of blubber. And you can see that seal there enjoying that fat and happy seal just lying out on that cold, icy iceberg. He's perfectly comfortable with all that blubber. And then we have polar bears. So They also have a lot of blubber, but in addition to that, they have a double coat of fur. And so that really keeps them warm, even in the icy water. And, there was a question that I saw on the Padlet about a question was, do polar bears hibernate? And the answer is actually no. They are one bear that do not hibernate. They stay active all winter long, and they can do that because of their blubber and their double coat of fur. So, how do you think caribou stay warm? What
Yeah,
body parts? What
that
body parts do
is
they use?
a great question. And thinking about the polar bear, it turns out that they also have a double coat of fur. And so caribou has an inner layer of fur that traps some of their body heat. It's nice and fluffy. And then they have an outer layer of hair. It's called guard hair. And it's made up of microscopic tiny little holes in the hairs. And so what those holes do is they also trap air inside, keeping the caribou's heat inside its body. And another thing that's really neat about those guard hairs, because they have all those little holes, it's kind of like a pool noodle. If you've ever used one of those to float. So the caribou actually use those hairs to help them float, and it helps them cross rivers.
Oh my gosh! So their hair is useful for staying warm, but also for staying afloat in rivers.
That's
And
right.
there's a microscope picture of a single caribou hair, and you can see those little holes that you were talking about, Dan, where the warm air is trapped.
Yeah, that's looking at those tiny, tiny holes that you could only see with a special microscope.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Let's
we can go back to our drawing now.
yeah, let's do that. So let's take some time to add any more body parts or adaptations you think might help your caribou survive the Arctic winter.
Yeah, let's do some more drawing, some more labeling.
And again, when you're done with it, add some more body parts because there's so many different ones that help the caribou survive the Arctic. You could also draw in some of the habitat later, and we'd love to see it on the Padlet.
You know, I'll bet some of our scientist friends out there will even come up with an adaptation or a body part we didn't even think of.
Dan, I'm almost positive that will be true. We'll give you about 30 more seconds. Okay. Again, you can finish this up later, I'm sure. So Dan, it looks like you're no longer in the Arctic.
That's right. I actually have some really neat specimens of things that about caribou.
Mhm.
So I had to come to this screen, and I'm in the museum, and I'm going to be able to share with you some really neat things.
What do you have?
First,
Yeah.
we have the lichen that caribou eat in the winter.
Oh, let me make you bigger so we can see. Yeah.
Look at all of that. So it's very lightweight, very squishy. You can find lichen on trees even here in San Francisco. They like moisture, wet places. So that's lichen. And the caribou, we talked about how they spend the entire winter eating it. So with all that snow and ice, like how do they find the lichen? So they use body parts. They use their their hooves to break the snow and the ice and to dig down. And so they can find their lichen that way. And how do they find it? How do they know where to dig? Well, they have a really keen sense of smell and a really incredible sense of smell. So they can smell where it is. And scientists believe that they might also be able to see the lichen below the snow and ice because they have special ultraviolet vision, is a theory that
Wow.
scientists have. Um, so they gather in groups and they eat and eat and eat that lichen.
What else do you have there?
We've got some of that guard hair and that other hair. We got the 2 layers of hair.
Oh, caribou fur. Yeah.
That's right. So right now you can think about, would this animal be able to camouflage? Yeah, this is pretty white, and even some of the, rocky areas. It's very soft, but it's also tough to guard. And then it's got, you can sort of see some of the fluffy parts. That's that inner layer that really holds in that first layer of heat. So that is that. And then I've
Da, da, da,
got
da. The antlers.
some antlers.
So
And Susan, why don't you tell us a little
yeah.
things about antlers?
So the antlers are made of bone, and both females and males have antlers. It's in the caribou family, which is very unusual. And what happens is the caribou will grow their antlers all year long, and then they drop them at the end of the year. So they start growing in the spring, and then they grow an inch a day, which is like really, really fast, right? And then
Really fast.
yeah, and at the end of the year, they just fall off. And maybe Dan, can you show? Yeah, so that's where they attach to the skull, and that's also just where they just fall right off at the end of the year. But here's an interesting thing about caribou, and that is the males, they both start growing their antlers in the spring, but the males will drop their antlers in the fall, maybe around Thanksgiving time. The females, though, keep their antlers all winter long. So here's the thing. If you see a picture of a reindeer with an antler in this winter season, like maybe now, is it a male or a female, a boy or a girl? And I'll just leave you with that question to ponder.
Pretty interesting to think
Pretty
about.
interesting. So, in addition to having caribou specimens at the Academy, we have had live caribou at the Academy as well. And this is the roof at the California Academy of Sciences.
That's right. So our reindeer do not fly, but we were able to get them up on the roof. It's actually a real picture.
Yeah, it's a real picture. I kid you not. The reindeer are up on our green roof. And we also have interns, teenagers, pretending to be caribou. And so to end on a bit of fun, we'd like to encourage you, maybe when this program is over, make your own antlers and do a little dance and continue enjoying this season for science.
Well, it was really
That's it.
fun, Susan.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, Dan. Thank
Thank you. We had a great 3 weeks. Thanks for all the sharing all the information about reindeer and caribou, and thank you all to our scientist participants out there. We would love for you to go to this last link, season 4A. Ask us some more questions, give us your feedback, and we are excited to look at the Padlet in the future and see what everyone has done. And hopefully we can see you again next year.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye, Dan.
Bye-bye. Bye, Susan. Bye, everybody.